Welcome to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese, a program that can help you become liberated in the modern world. Now, here's your host, Dr. Kevin W. Reese.
So have you seen the movie Soul? Welcome to episode number 125. And as I do every 5 episodes, it's my time to talk to you one-on-one. Just the other day, I finally saw the Disney Pixar movie, Soul. It's only about a year old, and so many people have been telling me, you got to see this, you got to see this. I saw it, and what a time to see it. It was profoundly impactful enough for me to analyze this and tell you about it on this podcast. I have to say that this movie is curriculum. No doubt about it. It's right there with The Matrix. It's right there with The Truman Show. It's right there with Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds. It's curriculum. If you want to understand spirituality and purpose on earth, this movie is extremely important to that. Very rarely is a movie curriculum. Usually a movie is hogwash. It's problems repeated over and over and over and over again to distract you from real life. But every now and again, a movie comes along that's impactful. And this is one of them. So obviously, spoiler alert. And if you've already seen it, watch it again after this episode. So I'm going to assume that you've seen it. Joe Gardner is the main character, and he's a jazz musician who hasn't made it yet. This hit me hard because, of course, as you know, I was in the entertainment business. And I had success on paper. But I never, quote unquote, made it, which most people would talk about making a living. Yes, I was a professional radio personality. I had a record label. I did all of this. I chased that dream. And people envied me. They wanted to be in my shoes, but they just didn't know that I was broke from chasing the dream. And I worked at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. That was my main job from my late 20s into my early 30s. That was how I paid my bills, being a teacher and an administrator. And so this character, Joe Gardner, is doing the same thing. He is a middle school teacher. And that's how he's paying his bills, but he wants to be a musician. He's a jazz musician. And the middle school finally offers him a full-time job, and he's not happy about it because in his heart, he's like, I want to be a musician because I'm good. He's talented, right? And so his mother is thrilled because his mother is judging him. And so this is a very important part of the movie, of the theme. People will judge you. And so his mom wants him to get a job and be, quote unquote, responsible. And he's like, Ma, I want to be a musician. So there's this resentment going on between mom and kid. Well, he's middle aged. But so, that's identifiable as well. And I expressed that many episodes ago on the Being Vulnerable episode when I was really going through it. So Joe Gardner finally gets his chance to be a professional jazz musician. He's so happy. He's so thrilled that on his way home from passing the audition, he dies. He falls down a sewer drain by accident because he's not paying attention, and he dies. So now he's in the, I guess you would call it the heaven stage, like where he's going to heaven. And he's like, no, I can't. I just got my lucky break. I got to go back. I got to go back. I got to go back. So what we have here is a theme of obsession, the theme of realizing your dream, the theme of being so attached to your talent, to your skill, to what it is that you love to do, that you can't let go. And so this character, Joe Gardner, he can't let go. He refuses to go to heaven. He's like, no, this is a mistake. It's not my time. I need to go back. I just got my lucky break. What are you obsessed about? Right? And we just recently, saw something similar with Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant, I mean, he already realized his dreams in basketball, but he was on to his next dreams of being an entertainment mogul and being a coach for his daughter and being a family man. And boom, just like that, it's over. Blink of an eye. And so this can happen to anybody. So Joe Gardner has to go to what's called the U seminar, and this is where he has to mentor a soul that hasn't been incarnated to Earth yet. And so he's paired with a character called number 22. And 22 doesn't want to go to Earth. She thinks it's stupid, and she's very pessimistic about it. She's just not. She thinks it's stupid. She doesn't want to do it. She's got the wrong attitude. And Joe just wants to get back there. And so you got opposites here. One of them wants to get back and one of them doesn't want to go. So they end up back on Earth and it's a switcheroo. 22 ends up in his body. So she gets to see from his eyes and he ends up being a cat. So this is a funny little twist. Fast forwarding, what happens is 22 ends up liking Earth. She ends up feeling the passion of being alive through his eyes. But he can't see it because all he wants to do is get to his dream, get to his big break. He's obsessed. He fulfills his dream of playing professionally in front of a live crowd. Afterwards, he doesn't feel content. He doesn't feel satisfied. It's like he finally reached the mountaintop and now he doesn't feel anything. And my favorite part, after he comes out of the club, after he's realized his dream, he should be so happy. He's not. And he mentions that to Dorothea, the famous musician who hired him. And she goes, I heard this story about a fish. He swims up to this older fish and says, I'm trying to find this thing they call the ocean. The ocean? Says the older fish. That's what you're in right now. He says, this? Says the younger fish. This is water. What I want is the ocean. Oh, man. And so this is very much like the famous Kabir poem, The Thirsty Fish. He says, I laugh when I hear that the fish in the water is thirsty. A fish doesn't know it's a fish. A fish doesn't know it's in water until you take it out of the water. This is very common amongst ambitious people. I did a whole episode on ambition like 2 years ago. People that are addicted to ambition are really addicted to the process, not the achieving the goal. It's the process. And so this guy, this character, now he feels unfulfilled even though he did it. So now he's depressed. And so now you got him needing to find 22 and remind her. I forgot what it's called, but she became what they call a lost soul. because she loved Earth, and now she didn't like Earth, then she did like Earth, and now she's just lost. And she's tormented by doubt and that she's not good enough. And so this is a big theme here. This is what we would call depression. So Joe Gardner, the main character, he feels a certain way. So he seeks out to find her. He does. And it's cool they have a mystic in here that, meditates and gets into the chakras. And so that's all the background cool stuff. But I just want to stick to the theme. But so Joe Gardner finds her. And he reminds her of her epiphany on Earth, that she loved everything. She loved everything about Earth. She loved the pizza. She loved the leaves on the trees, everything. And so he had to remind her of that. The thing that really hit me, and I was crying my eyes out when I was watching this. And, if you follow this podcast, you know why. Because I'm going through Dark Night of the Soul. And here it was, right here in this movie. That's exactly what it was. 22 and Joe were going through Dark Night of the Soul. It's interesting, too. Yesterday, I was having an off day yesterday. And so I went to one of my favorite places, this community garden I like to go to. And I'm just looking at the beauty of the flowers. And I was listening to Osho. I had Bhagwan in my ears, and he's talking about all seeds only sprout. He was saying tree seeds sprout in darkness. And so and if you want to sprout, if you want to reach a higher consciousness, you have to go through darkness. Period. We can go down the list. It happened to Eckhart Tolle. It happened to Osho. It happened to Ramana Maharshi. It happened to Vishrant. It happens to many, many enlightened beings. You have to go through some serious darkness in order to get to the other side. And in this movie, here it is. The darkness, the negativity, the doubt. And so I was crying my eyes out, man. I was just crying like a baby, man. Whew. I can't believe what I'm watching right now. It just touched me. So Joe Gardner rescues 22. And she ends up back in Earth. She ends up back in Earth to incarnate as a human. And we find out in the movie that Joe Gardner, the character, thought that everyone has a gift, everyone has a spark, and that to him it was music. But then we find out at the end of the movie that that's not the purpose of life. The purpose of life is this enlightenment. It's the wonderment of enjoying the present moment. That's the whole purpose. And this theme in the movie is real deal Holyfield. This is what it is. People get caught up on purpose, like, oh, their purpose is to be a movie star, their purpose is to have a nonprofit organization, or their purpose is to be a parent. No. Your purpose is to evolve. Your purpose is to be better at 40 than you were at 20. And better at 60 than you were at 40. And to evolve and learn. This is a school. And it's a video game. And if you want to beat the video game, you have to reach a state of higher consciousness. There's no other way. Because without that, your mind is in the way. Do you understand? Your mind is in the way. That's the whole crux of the whole thing. If you didn't have thoughts, there would be no depression, no anxiety, none of that. Because the present moment is fine. It's beautiful. Just this very moment is fine. So Joe Gardner discovers this. And of course, he came back to save 22, so now he's back. So he's basically dead again. And but the angels, or whatever you call them, they notice his selfless act, and they gave him another chance. They said, "You can go back. You can go back to Earth and be Joe Gardner." And he comes back to Earth, and he enjoys every moment. He is now enlightened. They don't say it in the movie, but this is the theme. This is the theme. This is what we've been talking about on this podcast for 125 episodes. This movie embodies it. No pun intended. Plus, you got the whole reincarnation thing going on. Interestingly enough, in just a few episodes ago, the interview I did with Derek Alexander, Pleiades, he talks about how, based on his research and understanding, your soul picks the life before it's incarnated. So you choose your parents, you choose your location, you choose what you're about to go through. And then when you wake up as a baby, in the new world, your memory is wiped out. But you choose it before your memory is wiped out. And so this is similar to this movie Soul. That's it. You're here to evolve. That's the game. And Joe Gardner evolved. He had to go through it. He had to have the breakthrough with his mom, because he finally told his mom how he feels in the movie. And that was a big scene too. I cried through that one too. That was a big scene, because he's finally telling his mom how he feels. And we have to do that. We have to lovingly express ourselves, not be held back by respectability. And so Joe Gardner goes through it. He reaches the mountaintop, for him anyway. He reaches the mountaintop and he's not satisfied. Why? Because he's not present. 22 was present. And so he has this realization. He has to go through a little depression. He has to go through these struggles. He has to die in order to appreciate life. This can also be seen in, the episode I did with Jake Cooper, or Peter Panagore, these near-death experiences, coming back after they died and whatnot. So that's it, man. That's it. This is a very impactful movie. Please go watch it. We have to wake up, even if it's a state of higher consciousness. Like Vishrant has said, enlightenment itself, we don't know. That could be grace. That could be God at work. But we can reach a state of higher consciousness. We can disidentify with our mind, with our thoughts. We can dissolve this ego. We can detox out these emotions. I'm going through it right now. And so that's what I'm telling you. And if you do want to reach the state of higher consciousness, you're going to have to go through the darkness, because the tree cannot sprout and grow unless it's in darkness. And it needs some water. What's the analogy of the water? It's your tears. It's your tears. You have to cry. You have to cry a lot. I did a whole episode on crying, how important it is. Dark night of the soul is the soil that you're trapped in, and your tears is the water. But sooner or later, if you stay at it and you don't cop out to coping mechanisms, if you just stay there and say, this is what I learned from Vishrant. I just read his book, Spiritual Mechanics. Highly recommend it. He talks about it in there. When you go through dark night, you have, if you want to reach your full potential, you have to say, okay, I surrender. If I die, it's okay. I am going to get through this with no coping mechanisms. If you go to a regular therapist who doesn't understand Dark Night of the Soul, if you get on medications, if you do this and that, take up this hobby and do this and do that, or dive into your career just to distract yourself from these awful feelings, you're taking yourself out of the soil. And you'll never become a tree. You're going to have to die regular, like a normal person, and then be reincarnated back. And hopefully the next go around, you got a better chance at becoming a tree. Vishrant is explicit. He says most people don't make it because they cop out the coping mechanisms. And they're not ready to die. They're not ready to just go through it. They're not ready to accept these awful feelings because it's awful. It's awful. What I went through in February, March, and April was awful. Now I understand it. So even when I have an off day, I don't feel good, but I understand it. And I accept it. Remember, if you want to become the tree, the big, beautiful tree, you got to rest deep in that soil. And you got to water yourself. You got to cry, 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 and cry.
Thanks for listening to Inner Peace with Dr. Reese. If this episode opened your heart, feel free to share on social media and tell your loved ones. Also, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may peace be with you.